Hello, listeners. If you've enjoyed these narrations, please click on that like and subscribe button. When I was a kid, my mom used to play with the lights. Even though I was just a kid, I still found it unsettling. It was always at night, always when I should have been sleeping. Many nights, if I opened my door a crack and looked out to the living room, there she would be. She'd stand facing the window with her back to me and her hand on the light switch. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Sometimes there was a pause that made it seem like there was some sort of pattern. Other times my mother would just simply flip the light switch wildly with madness in her eyes. A madness that I could watch reflecting in the glass. She caught me watching her once, and I remember it vividly. She just turned and smiled warmly. "Honey, you should be asleep." She bent down and ran her fingers through my hair. "It's okay. Go to bed, sweetheart." But I knew that whatever it was far from okay. I was only a child, and it was just the three of us. My mom and dad moved a lot when I was growing up, but this slowed down around when I was 9. That's when Mom got her own special room. When Dad stapled dark squishy styrofoam on the walls of a spare bedroom. We'd moved to some dizzyingly high apartment building, 30 stories up or more. Looking back, the walls were water-stained and roaches ran when you turned on the lights, but to the 9-year-old me, it was a palace where my ears popped in the elevator. I mostly remember my mother as being sweet, while I always remember my father as a silently furious man. It was as if he held his entire body white-knuckled. Teeth and muscles alike were held so tight that I wouldn't be surprised to hear them crack or tear. There were a lot of things that stressed Dad out, one of them being Uncle Damien. He'd only come when Dad wasn't home, and he and Mom would whisper at the kitchen table. A couple of times Dad had found out that Damien had been over. He got somehow even madder than his resting rage and tore into my mother with fury. Then there was the murder. I blamed myself for a very long time. I mean, the signs were there, but as you'll come to see, what was a kid to do? My mom was black and blue, but still, she'd looked out into the neighboring below and flipped the switch frantically. The police station smelled of brewing coffee and a musk of wet human. My nostrils flared as I folded the umbrella and stomped my boots on the black entry mat. Luckily, I didn't have to wait, because as soon as I said my name at the counter, a detective ushered me over to the corner and into a well-lit office. He shut the door and we both sat. "I've got it right here," he said as he punched over a pink journal. There was a brass clasp where it looked like a little lock had been sawn off. "Rachel McCann's diary." I reached towards the notebook but paused. "May I read it?" He nodded. "Go to where it's dog-eared. That's where this all starts." I did as he said and I read. March 24th, 2008. "Someone in the Williams building is flashing their lights at night. I saw them 3 times, again and again tonight. I told Daddy, but he didn't see it. He missed it. He says it's probably just a kid like me messing around, but I don't think so. 10:12. Both times I've checked the time when the lights were flashing, and it was 10:12. If there are 1400 minutes in a day, the odds of that happening twice are 1 in 1400, or something like that. Daddy thinks it's just a coincidence, but he hasn't even seen them flash." March 25th, 2008. "They're flashing right now, as I write this. The Williams building tower over our house, but I could still see someone standing in front of the window as they flash the lights. It's 10:30 and the flashes have stopped. It didn't start at 10:12. Maybe Dad was right. I don't think it's a kid. The person I saw looked kind of like a grown-up. Daddy said the flashings could be some kind of code, like Morse code. He's not curious about the flashes like I am, but he said he'd still teach me to understand the code. March 29th, 2008. Morse code's not that hard. The dots are when the lights flash, and when they stay on for a pause, that's a dash. I realized watching videos that the flashing in the window might be too fast for me to understand though. But I think I know enough to at least tell if the flashing is actually code or not. Now I'm just waiting for the lights to flash again. It's been 4 days and no flash. The next entry didn't have a date. It started with a series of dots and dashes. Morse code, I realized. There are 3. It's been flashing, and I know what they're saying. I can't get it all, not even close. It's flashing too fast. But I got the end. They said in the code that there are 3. I'm trying to figure out what that means. Maybe it means they're being held prisoner by 3 people? I think it might be someone that needs help. They're sending Morse code and I'm the only one seeing it, but I haven't seen the signal for SOS. If I do, I'll tell Mom and Dad. Maybe I could save this person. The rest of the page was filled with more dots and lines. I suck at Morse code. It's the middle of the night now. I woke up and saw the lights flashing again. I tried to write the flashes as Morse code, but it must be wrong. It's going too fast. The words are... The writing stopped and continued on the line below. I'm not a scaredy cat, but it's late and something's wrong. I heard a shout downstairs. I can't bring myself to leave my room. I'm hiding under the bed like a little girl. I can see from here. The lights are flashing slower. The message is repeating. There were more dots and dashes. The ink was smudged as if Rachel was writing furiously. This can't be right. The flashing lights, they're not in trouble. They're talking about me. She's under the bed. That has to be about me. The lights aren't flashing anymore. The person's at the window. They're just staring at me now. There must have been a pause before the last sentence was written. The words were separated from the rest of the text. Small and written slightly sideways, it read, "That's not Daddy's voice." I leaned back and shivered. The detective spun the journal on the desk so it faced him. "We interviewed the occupants of every south-facing apartment in the Williams Tower, but we found no leads. You're saying your mother would frequently flash the lights, correct?" I just ignored him, lost in my own head. What happened to the girl?" I asked. The detective frowned. "You don't know?" I mean, I do. She was found killed the morning after this was written, her parents too, but how'd she die?" The detective raised his eyebrows, scratched his cheek with a thumb. "The parents' throats were torn apart. The coroner said that the cuts were so dull it was like an animal had done it. And the girl, her nose and mouth were sewn shut. She suffocated. And some of her skin was sewn too, like surgical scars. But can you tell me more about your mother? We believe whoever killed the McCain family was getting assistance from the person that was signaling the light. The south-facing apartment of the tower was an excellent view of the house. So please, can you tell me where your mother is now?" I never could remember Uncle Damien's face. My mom would turn off the lights when he visited. But when I heard the detective say Rachel's skin was sewn, an image shuddered back into my mind. I saw Damien's mouth closed with a black slit of sewing thread. His clothes were made of an ugly beige leather, like skin, stitched together. He would do her bidding. My dad told me drunk one night when I was a kid. "That thing comes and sees your mom when I'm away. It's not your uncle. It's a demon. I locked her away and still she uses a light to talk with it now." "Hello?" The detective yelled. "Anybody home?" I shook with a start. Sorry, I stood abruptly. "Leaving. This is still a murder investigation. You have to tell me about your mother." "You should know, detective. She's dead," I said, and practically ran from the room. That night I stood in my kitchen and poured a drink with shaking hands. A pen and a single sheet of college roll paper sat on the counter. I didn't know what to make of it all. In my early teens, the newlyweds down the block were found murdered, and my parents and I were moving across the country again. My father was screaming at my mother, asking her what she had done. I remember when my father pulled into a gas station. His face was bleeding from where my mom had scratched him. He reached across the tiny back seat, opening my door, and from the inside he pushed me out. With tears in his eyes, he looked at me and told me he loved me. And then he stomped on the gas pedal. The car was a dot in the distance when I saw it swerve into oncoming lane. When I caught up with the car, I could see the black shadow of my parents' bodies still burning in their seats. Maybe my mom hit the wheel, but really I know what my dad had done. He had taken things into his own hand to keep her from hurting anyone anymore. I had put these demons in my past, buried them, but what led me to the police station and down memory lane in the first place was what I saw now. What I've been seeing for the last 3 nights in a row. Out the window, in an apartment building a few blocks down, lights are flashing in a single window, and I see a man has been walking down the dark streets below. His mouth is a tight line. I swear I can see the sewing threads from here. I know who it is. I know it's Damien because I've already translated what the flashes say. It's a simple command. I've written it on the paper on the counter. Sew his skin.